Welcome to Women of the Wild,
where education and opportunities are key,
and friendships are made to last a lifetime.
Did you get it?
You think we got him? You think we got him? We got him.
All right, Skylar, what do we got here?
We got a nice looking rip off.
Oh, there she is. Woo! You dropped our great ghost.
Give me a hug.
Welcome back to Season 2 Women of the Wild podcast. We would like to first start off by thanking our title sponsors for the 2024 year. Atlantic Coral Enterprise, one of the largest import dealers in the world with excellent quality for hides, skulls, shells, and amazing gifts for friends and family or even your household. You can find them at AtlanticCoralEnterprise.com. RM Custom Called, multiple world championships from Main Street to Live Duck. American made, veteran owned. When you want to win on the stage or in the blind, we have you covered. Small shop, big sound. You can find them at rmcustomcall.com or on Instagram. We also have Rhino Land Safaris, providing exceptional quality with unmatched hospitality and cuisine, offering African safaris, a destination hunt for the avid rifle or bow hunter with some of the best trophy management South Africa has to offer. You can find them at rhinoland.co.za or on Facebook, Instagram.
Hey everyone, Andy Lehman here from ACC Crappie Sticks. Just want to let you know about our crappie baits and jig heads. We have a wide selection of the hottest colors and big eye crappie jig heads in the most popular colors and sizes. Check them all out at accrappiesticks.com. Thank you.
And now for today's episode, we hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Season 2 Women of the Wild podcast. We are here today with an awesome guest, Kate Small, and you are an avid outdoors woman. You are doing things all over. Just saw you got back from Texas, but you have an awesome conservation story that I think education needs to be brought to. But first, I'd like to start with introducing you and telling us who you are and how you got started in the outdoors.
Yes. So like you said, I'm Kate Small. I'm a registered nurse. I live in Idaho. I have 2 little kids, which is a big portion of this story. But how I got started in hunting was I was late to the game. I didn't grow up in a hunting family. No one I knew really hunted. And I played sports my entire life. And once I hit college and sports ended, I was kind of looking for something else to fulfill that competitive drive, and just I had so much time on my hands. And my mom around that time had married my stepdad, and so when I was 19, he took me out hunting for the first time, and I fell in love with it. And it was an amazing way for him and I to bond and get to know each other. And we've hunted every year since I was 19. But after that, I grew up in Oregon. I should start with that because that's where I started hunting. And when we first started going out, there were deer and elk, and we'd see animals. And as time progressed, we'd see less animals and more wolf sign. And in Oregon, you can't hunt or trap wolves. There's no management for them. They're protected. And after I graduated nursing school, I moved to Idaho, and I realized, hey, this is a state where you can actually do something about this predator problem. And so I really wanted to get into it. And with wolves, there's no education out there. There's no, we have everything for elk or whitetail or muleys, but there's no wolf education. So really, I met my husband, and with us, it was trial and error and years of failing before we actually became successful. But one of the main reasons we decided to start managing wolves or doing our part in helping to manage them was because we have 2 small kids. And I realized one day, if we don't fix this problem, my kids aren't going to get the experience of hearing an elk bugle in the mountains or getting to cook a muley backstrap on top of a mountain over an open fire. And they're not going to have that moral compass that I was afforded. And so we were like, we need to do our part. And that's how we really got into wolf management.
Which is incredible and such a great backstory, but also the protection for your children, right? Like if you're overrun with wolves, you start running that risk of what happens when they're playing outside and fear level.
Absolutely.
It's, you know,
absolutely. If they're not hunted and have that fear of people, then why wouldn't they come up and grab my child? Or why wouldn't they attack me when I'm out in the woods? Just like Montana's having the issues with grizzlies right now, they're protected and they've had so many hunters attacked by grizzlies and there's nothing you can do because they're not scared. And that's a scary thing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, here in Michigan, we run into that with it for a long time. We ran into it with coyotes. I actually had our chocolate lab got attacked in broad daylight by a pack of coyotes a couple 100 yards from the bus stop in broad daylight.
No kidding.
People think that that's not a possibility, but in all reality it is. And you can see it through things like that, through people's pets getting attacked. I mean, I've seen videos where wolves come up and grab somebody's dog from off their porch. Like it does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in Idaho, there's still stories of hunters being surrounded by a pack of wolves. And, you know, I mean, we don't want them wiped off the landscape, but they need to fear humans and we need to manage them for our ungulate populations.
Yes, absolutely. And our listeners aren't aware of this, but we talked briefly before starting the podcast that it's a misconception that hunters are here to eradicate a population. That is not what we want. We are here to manage a population. So it's so important to manage those populations because it manages other populations. You start looking at your whitetail, your elk, your mule deer, your turkeys. All of those populations are not going to thrive if a predator is not managed. So I would love for you to dive into that. You are much more of an expert in that than I am. I have a deep passion, but what you're doing does matter. And I think that you hold such a great education base that I'd love for it to come from you.
Well, sure. I like to start with history and statistics because it gives people just a much better idea of why we do what we do and why wolves need to be managed. So wolves, and these stats are all based out of Idaho. So wolves were introduced to Idaho in 1995 by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. The original goal for the Northern Rocky Mountain population segment, which is Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the eastern third of Oregon and Washington, and a small portion of Utah. That entire goal was 300 wolves for that whole area, with 1,500 wolves in that whole area being the long-term carrying capacity, meaning that if wolves sustained over 1,500 in population for a period of time, there would be increased livestock conflict and the ungulate population would inevitably decline. And Idaho alone, the goal considered fully recovered was 150 deemed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Currently, our last count in Idaho alone was 1,337 wolves. And so and that is down a little bit from previous years. Previous years, we've been over 1,500. So we are right at that mark of all of those states, just in Idaho. And that doesn't include our biggest wilderness areas, which is the Frank Church Wilderness and the Selway. So we likely that's a low estimate, and we have a lot more wolves. And we've been seeing a ton of ungulate decline, a ton of livestock conflict, wolves coming in, taking dogs, like you said, off ranches, out of people's yards. And not only that, but it's changed our ungulates' behavior. So yes, the ungulates are declining, but that's just one portion of this. They're also causing ranchers millions of dollars because now the elk have moved down and they're learning to live on these ranches and they're eating the feed that the ranchers put out for their cattle. They're eating crops and it's costing so much money. And then these elk are having babies, and those babies, all they know is living on this private property where it's safer. It's changed hunting where elk don't bugle as much, so it's harder for archers to find them. And it's just wild to see. They also, wolves will chase mountain lions, we're seeing, off of their kills. So that mountain lion's having to kill again and again, which is causing more ungulate decline. And wolves left unmanaged will grow 40% annually. So it's just imperative that we manage them. You'll say, I'll hear people say, well, why wolves? Why aren't you going after bears or mountain lions? And I hunt bear. I actually love bear meat, but wolves are different from any other predator because if you take bears or mountain lions, they're having offspring every other year. And they're having, somewhere between 1, maybe on the high side is 4. But usually that 1 or 2 is the norm for them. Wolves reproduce every year. And they're in Idaho, they say the average is 4 to 5 in a litter. But I have close friends that have found litters of 13. Yeah. And
Wow.
they're dogs. If you think of your typical dog, they could have 2 pups or they could have 15 pups, and it's just whatever they throw is what they throw. And also it was said that only there's a breeding male and a breeding female, and they're the only ones in the pack that breed. Well, that's just not true. Any female that goes into heat, the males are going to breed. They're dogs. They're not living by these rules that we want them to live by. And so you're having multiple litters in each pack. And so they're just skyrocketing. And then you have how much they consume. So in Idaho, they consume 16 to 28 big game animals per year. So we have moose, we have elk, we have deer. That's what they're consuming. But that doesn't talk about the spontaneous abortions they're causing when they're chasing the elk through the mountains when they're pregnant. That doesn't include just, they'll say they only kill the old or the sick or the weak. That's not true. They're dogs. So if you think about your domestic dog, and a cat runs by your dog, or you take your dog to a sheep lot. If you don't give that dog a command, like you stay right next to me, that dog's going to chase that animal and maybe take a bite. A wolf's the same way. They're not evil. They're not doing it on purpose. It's their instinct. So a deer runs by or they see a herd of elk, they're going to chase because they're curious. They're going to bite it and maim it and then realize, hey, I'm not hungry. I was just bored. That was my instinct. And they're going to leave. So even though they're consuming 16 to 28 big game a year, they're killing a lot more. And we see that very frequently. We frequently run into mature bulls that have been hamstringed and have their entrails hanging out, and there's no wolves around. They've just left because they were bored. And unfortunately, that's the reality that people don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, it's instinct hunting. It's not so much as like cat, right? Like where big cats, they'll kill to kill. That you'll have a lot of that issue. This is more of an instinct of, like you said, it's caught my attraction. I need to figure out what it is. And then the instinct catches where it's like, I'm going to take a bite. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to try to get it on the ground. But I mean, that number too of the big game animals that they're killing also has to depend on how large that pack is that they're feeding. And if you have, a couple of females that threw multiple litters a couple of multiple litters through that pack in a year, and say they are on the high end, and say you're seeing 6 to 8 or 9 puppies out of that, and you start timesing that out by 3, maybe even 4 females. And the other thing about wolves is they'll nanny in for others. So like there's that misconception that they'll kick pups. I've heard that in the past, that people are like, oh, well, if you shoot mom, then what? The pups are not going to starve. They will nanny others in. Or take care of the babies while moms go hunt.
Exactly.
It's a very undiscussed topic. And I think what you're doing, and you host an educational course. So I would love for you to tell our listeners about your educational course, because you started doing that. Has it been 2-3 years now?
This will be our second year now.
Second. You started that. I followed your journey long before you started that class, but once you started that class, I was like, yes, I've never heard of anybody doing anything like that. And for any of our listeners who are intrigued by what you're saying, or maybe have been wolf hunting, but maybe they've been unsuccessful, I would love for you to talk about this course and what you're educating on, and like what somebody could expect from that course.
Yes, absolutely. So I teach along with my husband and Tom Snyder, who's from Stuck in the Rut. He lives up in northern Idaho. We got together and well, background on that, like I said, it was years of failure before we got consistently successful with hunting wolves. And there was no education. You can't Google how do I hunt a wolf on the internet. There's a lot of guys out there like, oh, it's easy. It's not. I'll be perfectly honest with that. The statistics last year in Idaho for wolf hunting and trapping combined where it was 0.0006% success rate for people that bought tags and filled them. And so when we started, when we met Tom Snyder, and he had killed a few wolves, and we started talking, and we were bouncing ideas back and forth off each other, like, okay, well, we failed here, this was the wolves' behavior, and he'd do the same with us, and we learned from each other on kind of how they talk, what they're doing, their behaviors. And we pretty much studied these things for years. And once we all became year after year successful and felt like we've got this pretty honed in, we said, hey, let's cut this educational gap for other hunters and trappers, because we want them managed. We don't want people, just we want other people to be successful in wolf management. And we need help here in Idaho to do that, because we're not touching the numbers of the population. So instead of them taking, 5-6 years of figuring it out on their own, let's put on a camp and teach them how. So what we do in our camp, we cover, everything. It's a 3-day retreat on a guest ranch in Idaho, and meals and lodging are covered. And it's my husband, Tom, and myself, and we cover wolf howls and what they mean, because just like elk have a language, and that roundup bugle, wolves have the same thing. We cover their behaviors and where they're gonna inhabit certain times of the year. And we cover how to hunt them in certain terrain, because we're in a lot different terrain than Tom is up north, and he hunts them a different time of year than we hunt them. And so we cover all that. We cover trapping completely, and we cover onX maps and how to look, where you should look for them, where you should go during certain times of year. And then we also cover how to howl and what calls to use, and during all different scenarios and certain situations. And then I think my favorite part of the camp is we put on a air gun shooting course, and we get these life-size wolf targets, and we put them in ways that are situations we've been in. And we'll make you, run up a mountain and then shoot, because usually it's a quick shot on a wolf and you don't get forever. I mean, sometimes if you're on a pack that you've spotted forever away, you do, but that's fun. And we make it a little competition. And then every night we do basically campfire questions, and it's a small retreat. So you get that one-on-one time with us to go over everything, to make sure you take everything you want out of this course. And that's kind of why we started it. Also, because we have a lot of people come in from out of state who don't know how to hunt wolves, and they'll get an opportunity and blow it. And then it's really hard to hunt that pack afterwards, because wolves are so intelligent that you know exactly what pack's been hunted by their behavior. And if
they get educated.
Exactly. There you can educate them so easily. And I'll admit I've been guilty of that as well. But this just kind of cuts the gaps for people and helps us out, so they're not in Idaho educating wolves as well.
Yeah, I can see that being multi-beneficial. It's going to help control that population. It's going to help you control that population because people aren't out there being uneducated and educating the wolves by misbehavior, or just mistakes, not necessarily misbehavior, but making those mistakes where you're educating a pack or multiple packs, and that then makes your job harder too. I think it's awesome. So in that course, they learn all of this. It's just a course. It's not a hunt.
Yeah, it's not a hunt. We're not guides because honestly, the success rates are so low. I'd feel bad taking somebody's money to get, like, come on a wolf hunt with me. We're not going to see anything, but it's just an educational course. And then from that course, if you're ever in a situation where, like, give us a call anytime you have questions. And so it's gaining like lifelong friends too, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they are so intelligent. Their territory is an average of 250 square miles. And so they're extremely hard to hunt because they can travel fast and far. And we're overpopulated, but it's not like you go to Idaho and you see wolves around every corner. Like it sounds like you guys are having an issue with.
Yeah.
But we have a big area and it's finding the wolves. And once you find them, what do you do?
Right. No, I think that's great. And I love that you guys do that simulation of a hunt too, because it trains you to be ready for that situation once you are in it, that it's not always as easy as just setting up. You got a tripod, you lay your bumper down or whatever it may be to shoot. It's not going to be like that. Like it might be a run and gun kind of situation. And
absolutely
what you see on TV isn't always portrayed as how it goes. So it's nice to hear that you're doing that simulation of an actual hunt along with all of this and making it a fun competition. I think that's really awesome to be doing that.
Yeah, it's a fun day when we do that.
But diving into the education. So we are going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to dive into kind of some of those tips that you have for not educating for our listeners that might be doing this. So we'll be right back and we're going to listen in from our sponsors.
Share your love of the outdoors with your little ones through the exciting adventures in Dr. Josh Farr's children's books. As an avid sportsman, Dr. Josh Farr has taken his passion for the outdoors and uses his vivid storytelling to teach valuable lessons and appreciation of the world. Learn the alphabet through the ABCs of hunting. Find joy in exploring the outdoors with Let's Go Out and Play and more. You and your child will love learning about nature with Dr. Josh Farr. See all of his books now at drjoshfarr.com. That's drjoshfarr.com.
Weeby Knives, a brand of skinning, fleshing, and butchering knives perfect for the hunters, trappers, and fishermen, with a unique high-quality knife for animals of all shapes and sizes. You can find them and more information at weebyknives.com or on Facebook, Instagram. Stonehouse Digital Consulting. Elevate your small business with Stonehouse's expert marketing solutions. Ignite your online presence and thrive with a tailored strategy to drive your growth. You can find them and more information at stonehousedigitalconsulting.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Livingston County Pheasants Forever, Chapter 465, with a mission to conserve pheasant, quail, and other wildlife through habitat improvements, public access, education, and conservation. You can contribute by joining the meetings on the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. at the Howell American Legion Hall on the corner of M59 and Grand River. For more information and to get involved, you can find them at pf465.com or on Facebook, Instagram. Dreamcatcher Charters, a Michigan-based guide service for walleye, sturgeon, and duck hunting, with a passion that drives their success, sharing the phenomenal Michigan waterways with everyone. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram. Feather Moon Outdoors, offering calls made from select materials. Every pot is fine-tuned in the house using the highest quality materials available. Also offering diaphragm, slate, glass, grunt calls, and more. For more information, you can find them at feathermoonoutdoors.com or on Facebook, Instagram. Stay tuned, more podcasts to come. Welcome back. We are here with Kate Small from Idaho, and we are talking wolf conservation. Awesome topic that you don't ever hear discussed. So I'm really excited to dive into this with you. But we were just discussing on the course that you and your husband and Tom Schneider, did I say that right? Okay.
Yeah,
That you guys are instructing over there in Idaho, and it's a very controlled environment. It's just an educational course of teaching people basically how not to educate wolves, but also to learn how to be more successful. So in that, and you don't have to dive like super deep into it, but what are some of those tips that you don't want to do to educate a wolf, or maybe those sounds that you're listening for from a pack to know, like that, to educate yourself of what they're vocalizing?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for educating wolves is taking a shot when you don't have one. A big thing that's changed for us is we've started using suppressors, and that way, you know, all they're hearing is the bullet, hopefully hitting them, not hitting a rock or something by them, but they don't associate being shot with suppressors. So avoid those muzzle breaks if you can. I know getting a suppressor is so hard for some people, but make every shot count. Don't just go out there and sling lead because you're on a pack. Try and make it count. Otherwise, that's going to be a really hard pack to hunt. They're in Idaho, they're so educated now that certain calls, depending on the pack, you'll turn on, you know, a Fox Pro distress call and they'll just run the other way, or even howling with your mouth. They're so smart, and it really depends on the pack. So if you're going to a spot, maybe talk to some locals. People are pretty hush hush because they don't want their packs being ruined, but just if you see a pack, just try to get a good clean shot on it and don't rush it. If I don't have a clean shot or I'm set up and I feel confident, I won't take it, just because I want another opportunity, and they're so few and far between that I don't want to blow it. And yeah, for the packs, often what I'll do is I never just take off hiking into the woods, because like I said, their territory is 250 square miles. If I don't see a fresh track, I'm not going anywhere. But we'll drive roads looking for tracks. I'll get up on a ridge and I'll howl. And oftentimes we just howl to locate. And once we locate, then depending on the pack, we'll formulate a game plan. Like, okay, they're pretty close. Maybe I can sneak my way in and set up a call, or maybe we can just sneak all the way in. Depending on the time of month, you can howl, which is my favorite time to hunt, is February, because it's mating season. And so they're more vocal and more territorial. And so actually the very first wolves my husband and I got was during February, and we howled with our mouths, and we had the alpha female beeline straight at us. And my husband shot her at 46 yards, and she was coming to kill because she thought we were another wolf encroaching on her territory. And we watched her across a frozen lake just run straight. It was an experience.
How cool is that, though?
It was really interesting. It was so interesting.
I have to ask, what when you say howl with your mouth, what is it that you're doing?
So honestly, you can just go on and like Google or YouTube or whatever and type in like lone wolf howl or I don't know if they have a locator howl, but just try and mimic a wolf. And it's just like there's a long, and I'll admit my husband can do it better than I can, because they have that deeper, you know, tone. But it's a very like long, drawn out with just some different tones thrown in there. It's not just this one like steady.
Can you simulate like, one of what it should be like?
I don't know.
I would love.
It'll turn out if it sounds awful, it's just the computer. Okay, I'll try this. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't know if it comes through, but I see what you're saying now with that depth and drawn out.
Yeah, and you kind of like taper out, and they start out loud and then kind of go down, and they're usually much longer than my lung capacity can do. But even with that, I can still get responses. And actually, Phelps makes a wolf howler, like a bugle tube, but it's for wolves. And we give that out at our the Western Wolf Academy as well. And that's what we have people practice with.
Okay.
And, so
And
we
I'm sure
teach
that,
you how to use that.
yeah, I'm sure that assists a lot better.
It does. It does.
Okay. So you just do one though. You just howl and you wait to locate where they're at. And then that's when you devise your plan of where you're going to like go after them.
Yeah. And you could wait for a while, because there could be a pack out there, or there could be one wolf. And so and sometimes they send out scouts where they're like, we heard that we've been hunted, we're not going to respond. And they send out a couple to, like, they know they can pinpoint right where you are, and they'll come in to check it out. So, I mean, I've had situations where I've been waiting an hour and I'm set up and I'm like, I think, they're going to come from here. There's nothing. And I'm done, and I'll turn around and there's a wolf standing right behind me.
Oh my God.
It's blown, so patience is a game too here. And I like to describe it as, in Jurassic Park, where he's talking about the raptors and he's like, there's one in front of you and you're focused on that one. And then from the sides, they come in. That's kind of how wolves operate as well.
Yeah, they're incredibly intelligent. And I think they're not given that credit.
Yeah. And that's one thing you'll get a lot of, like you said, they're controversial. You'll get a lot of hate because there's so much misconception. But the one thing I'll say is I probably respect wolves more than anyone else, or anyone that doesn't hunt or trap them, because I can see how intelligent they are and what they're amazing creatures. There's no denying that. And I don't want them wiped off the landscape by any means, but to salvage our ungulate population, they have to be managed.
Right.
And go ahead.
That's such the big misconception. Like, it really is. Anytime you hear, whether it's an anti-hunter or, like I say, the greenie of like, they just don't know, the uneducated, it's always that thought process that as hunters, you're these murderers, you're coming in to wipe out these populations, that you're poaching. And it's like, no, rewind. All we want is these populations managed for generations to come, because we want our children, we want our grandchildren to have a hunting life in the outdoors that's supple and that is going to keep regenerating. If we just leave it unmanaged, something like wolves is going to wipe out populations of other things, that elk, caribou, like there's so many populations that could start to diminish if left unmanaged. And that's really the whole bottom line of it all, is we just want everything managed properly so everything can thrive.
Exactly. Well, and not to mention, I did just listen to a podcast and they were talking about the difference between wolves and coyotes. And it sounds like coyotes have that hormone that if they're overpopulated, they'll have fewer and fewer pups in their litter. But wolves apparently don't have that hormone. So they'll just keep reproducing at a steady rate, no matter what. And if you think about it, if we don't manage the wolves, they're going to eat everything, and then they're going to die, and they're going to have disease. And so if everything's managed properly, you stop the spread of disease. There's enough food for each animal. And that's just like we manage elk and deer and moose. We have to manage the predators.
It's just a healthy balance.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love what you're doing with these wolves, but that's not all you do. You bear hunt. You have gone out and you've done, is it the mule deer that I think I saw that you've done a couple of them? And like I said at the beginning of this, you just got back from a Texas hog hunt. Like, you're kind of that jack of all trade too. And I love seeing that, but I'd love to dive into, like, aside from just the wolves, what else are you out there doing and managing? Because as a female, seeing another female in the outdoors, we get very inspired by another woman. And I think you are a very inspirational woman that has so much knowledge to probably disperse out to bring more women in the outdoors. And I'd love to hear, like, your story of what, like, your seasons look like and what you chase.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. So a typical season for me is, let's see, we'll start in the spring. Usually, well, I guess I'll start in winter because starting January, it's all wolf trapping and wolf hunting. Usually my winters are focused more on wolves, and I help some ranchers manage their coyote issues as well. But as soon as winter hits, it's trapping season and just wolves and predators. Moving into spring, which is probably my favorite season, is black bear. And so we do spot and stalk black bear every year. I'll run baits as well for friends and family, but there's nothing like just being back in the mountains for a week, spot and stalk black bear. And in Idaho, you can actually get 2 tags in certain units because the bear populations are so high. And so my spring is full of that, whether I'm the one behind the trigger or out with friends or family. I just love bear. And like I was saying, a bear meat's one of my favorites. So I get really excited about that. And then summertime, we just there's no other big game seasons. So we just kind of go back to wolves. And we can't trap in the summer. So it's just wolf hunting and more ranch management for coyotes. And it's always something because I hate not hunting anything. So it's always, we found that there's always something. And then in the fall, it focus shifts and we're solely deer in October, and then archery elk August, late August through September. And then we start all over in the winter.
And then it's a vicious cycle.
I know it is. It's an expensive, time-consuming cycle, but
it's awesome. And you have 2 little kids who are being raised in this outdoor lifestyle. So you're raising women with children are so important because we have that motto of you can take a man hunting and you've taken a man hunting. But if you take a woman hunting, you've now introduced a community because they get their children involved. You get their friends involved. And sometimes it's spouses. We've had women who their spouses didn't hunt. They come out and they get on a hunt. They get so avidly excited about this that they take it home. And now their spouse who wasn't hunting is, but now those kids are coming out. And it builds a community with women. And plus, I think we're just super inclined to share our experiences.
Yeah.
We're not afraid to hide of, oh my God, this is how I did it. And this is where I did it. And I want other people to do this to experience what I just experienced.
Exactly. Well, and I think there's that intimidation factor for women to get into hunting and anything outdoors. And I still find it, I'll still get those comments from oh, well, I bet your dad's truck was right behind you and you didn't even hike. I'm like, the only, I guess, deficiency you could say I have, or disadvantage I have for being a woman is, one, I'm pretty small as it is. I'm 5 foot, 100 pounds, is packing out, but I can still pack out a lot, but it's obviously I'm not going to pack out as much as my husband. And honestly, that's about it. There's just because you're a girl does that stop you from squeezing a trigger? Does that stop you from pulling up an online map and figuring out where animals are? No. And so really it's just the weight of packing out, but okay, so make one more trip. No big deal. And it's just funny how our culture is oh, well, you're a girl, you can't be outside.
You shouldn't be doing that, or you can't do that. And I have to say, you and I are about the same size, 5 foot, 100 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah.
But the determination, and especially in women that I've noticed, is women have that determination. Well, no, we can't pack out the same amount of weight as a man. There are just physical boundaries that we are limited to, but we're going to give our damnedest to take as much as we can. So it's not like our packs are empty.
Exactly. And that's the thing it just makes me laugh because I'm probably most men I'll pack out more than that.
Well, and it's funny because it's usually those people saying those things that couldn't do what you're doing.
Exactly. And I will say there's been a tremendous amount that I've seen of support from men in the hunting community too, because most of the guys that are actual good hunters are heck yeah, you can do it. We're not going to baby you. get on with it. And it's the people that are those keyboard warriors that are just mad because they can't do it themselves. So how could a woman do it?
Right.
And so I just like, for any woman wanting to get into it, just talk to another girl, or like people, even the men are very open. Most of the men are very open and good. And there's no stupid questions. If you don't know, you don't know. And we all started there. Every single one of us started from having zero education and having to ask what seems so basic to everyone else. And just don't be scared, because if you don't ask, you're never going to learn.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said that better. I think that's something that women sometimes get trapped with. They're afraid to ask. They don't want to sound naive. They don't want to be, oh, that stupid girl didn't know this. It's like, no, ask. And especially ask, because now you're going to know. And sometimes it's knowing your surroundings. That's why with Women of the Wild, we try to do so many women specific hunts, because we break that barrier of there's not a stupid question to ask. If you're thinking it, someone else probably is too. So please ask it. We try to kind of be aware that some of these questions might come up. So we might answer the questions before you even know that you have them. But if we miss something, or if somebody's doing something in the outdoors, ask. Even if it's on a post on social media, like, it doesn't matter. As long as you're not coming from a sign of disrespect or like being negative, people want to help. And if people don't want to help you, screw them. They didn't matter anyways. Like,
just fun.
Yeah,
And
just
it's worth noting that there are so many different areas of hunting and trapping that most people don't know it all. So I just started trapping 3 years ago. And so when I started trapping, I knew nothing. I'd never even touched a trap. And so I found somebody that was a really good mentor, and I probably bothered the heck out of him and called him every single day asking the dumbest questions because I didn't know. But now I'm like, hey, now I can teach that because I did ask those stupid questions.
Sure. Well, I mean, I've been trapping for a couple of years as well. And I think it was either last season or the season before, I had taught myself how to do everything. I didn't have the answers. So I had, your trapper's Bible and things like that, that's how I taught myself to do it. And trial and error, but there was one season, and I want to say it wasn't this past trapping season. I want to say it was either the one before that or even the one before that. But we have some girls on our staff that are professional trappers. So I had a trap that had locked up, and we were in a deep freeze. And I messaged the two of them, and I was like, what do I do? And it just goes to show that even if you're proficient in something, someone else might be able to educate you on a way to do something different. Like, I'm the first to be like, listen, I'm doing it this way. It's not working. Somebody show me something else. Like, you learn what to do from people. You learn what not to do from people.
Yeah.
There's no set way this has to happen, especially as females. Like, we have to find what works for us. Our hands aren't big and muscular for the most part. We don't have certain physical capabilities, hands down. I'm not sitting here like He-Man woman hater. Like, there are physically things men can do that women cannot, and that's okay. But we're smart enough to find a workaround and figure out a way to make it work for us. But sometimes it's joining hands with another female and having that conversation. Okay, how do you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even say, as much like as females are intimidated, males getting into hunting, I find, have been intimidated, and they'll reach out to me as opposed to reaching out to my husband because they don't want to seem stupid in front of another guy. But
Yes.
like, women are a little bit softer and more of a safe place. And so that's been really interesting too, because
Yes.
guy hunters can be mean to other men. It's interesting.
Yeah, I've noticed an incline in that in the last, like, I would say 2 years, of men being willing to reach out if they don't know an answer. And it almost breaks that stigma that men have to like beat their chest of like, I need to know this. But like, to come to another man, they kind of feel the same way that women feel to ask. And that's something nobody ever talks about. But as hunters, man, woman, child, doesn't matter. we should be supporting each other. If somebody has a question, there's no reason to give a backhanded comment back. Like, you answer with education, you answer with kindness, and that's how our outdoors community is going to thrive and grow.
Absolutely. It's
So I love
it's cool. I love what you're doing here. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. We have an awesome team, and actually, I wanted to touch base on this with you because I know this is something else that you have done. We are actually in May getting ready to leave for Africa. And I know that that is something that you have gotten to experience, and would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about your experience and what to experience in South Africa.
Yes. So I love South Africa. I went probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I had lived in East Africa for a while just as a nurse. So I had gotten to see a lot of the animals while I was over there. But my husband had never been. And so when I was like, we're going to go to South Africa and we're going to hunt, it was my husband, my stepdad, and my husband's best friend, and none of them had seen those animals. And so just getting to see different species and how they behave is so cool. And you go with like a list in mind, like, hey, I want to shoot this, this, and this. And once you're over there, you're like, whoa, I didn't even know these animals existed. I want to hunt that. And it's just, the culture's so different. The hunting's so different from what I'm used to. And it was just such an experience to get to go over there and hunt. It's not like anything we do in Idaho. And so it was so different. And that's kind of what I love about hunting, is because there's just so many different things and modalities and ways to do it, that it's just, you could always learn something.
Yes, absolutely. Do you ever plan on going back?
Yes, I am planning on it. I just need to figure out when I'm gonna go. Probably in the next couple years, I'll try to go back because I just loved it.
Yeah, I tell everyone, you won't ever go just once. It won't happen. Like, you need to go and do that with a plan of, I'm going to fall in love with this place. It steals a piece of your soul. So whether I go every single year. So whether it's someone where you get addicted to it, like I have, to the point where I've started working for an outfitter over there, that I have that capability to do that. But then, like, I took my dad, and he's like, I'm going back. It's like a 5-year plan. Or I know people that are like, every 10 years we go back. Like, it is something that once you experience it like becomes part of you, and you yearn for that experience again.
It's so true. And it's almost like a group effort over there, and the camaraderie, and it's so much fun. Like, evenings were almost my favorite, when everybody would come back and you get to hear each other's stories, and it was just so much fun.
Yes. Yeah. And I always say that Texas is like the baby Africa. Like, if you want to dip your toes into it, but you're not sure where to start, go on a hunt in Texas, because Texas is like, they're regulated, but they're like the most unregulated when it comes to hunting license and animals and species that you would typically see in Africa. So I always tell people, if you want to experience it, that's a really great way to dip your toes in the sand.
No, exactly. That's a great idea. Or just go to Africa.
Or yeah, we host an event every single year. What's that?
I said, just bite the bullet and do it.
Yes. And it's not as expensive as a lot of people think it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah, like, to go do an elk hunt out west, right? To hire an outfitter to go do this. Once you factor in meals, lodging.
$10,000.
Yes, and you can go shoot, 6 animals over in Africa for that money, including your flight.
Exactly. Well, and even I was like, well, taxidermy is going to be through the roof. And we had everything taxidermied over there because I was like, they're used to those hides, and it was cheaper than it's done here. And I was like, holy cow, that wasn't bad at all. But you're right.
Let me ask you this, because this is not something that I do, because I have all of mine dip and packed and sent home, because I have a taxidermist here that specializes in African animals. So when you did and I know this was a few years ago, but for our listeners, from your experience, for those animals that you had mounted over there and you received them back, were you satisfied with the quality? What did shipping look like to get them home? Does it come to you? Do you still have to go to a broker? How did that work for you?
So for us, and I will say we probably went at the worst time ever. It would have been great, but when we were getting our animals back was right when COVID was hitting. And so shipping went through the roof. So what it was supposed to cost us ended up costing us 3 times the amount. And, you know, who can foresee that? But otherwise it would have been perfectly fine. But the shipping, the mounts were beautiful. We got everything we wanted back and everything was done just beautifully. We did have to go through a broker, and we were having it shipped to a tiny town. So we had to have the freight shipping as well. But it was easy, and they walked you through the process of it. And so if I can do it, someone else can do it. So
Yes.
they made it pretty simple. It seems a little daunting at first, but then they pretty much walk you through the process.
Yes, I think that unknown is just scary for people.
Yeah.
But it really, I tell people to leave your expectations at home, because Africa is this amazing place that you can't imagine it in your head for what it really is. So I tell people, leave your expectations at home, because it's going to far surpass it. But don't sit and watch like Nat Geo, and don't sit and watch, what's going on in the Kalahari and the Serengeti. Like, these are still places that you're hunting where there's management happening.
Yeah.
But then we dive into, we talk about conservation efforts and what happens with that meat, and feeding villages and creating an economy that they wouldn't have without hunters from all over the world. People from, Mexico, Belgium, they all come to South Africa to hunt too. But they're a third world country who is established based off of mostly hunters coming in and feeding those villages, which prevents poaching.
Yeah. And it's true. People will be like, they don't feed the villages. I lived with the Maasai tribe in Tanzania, and absolutely we got that meat. So I can 100% say that the villages are being fed. And I know, and there's so much, controversy. You probably didn't hear about, but a few years ago in Idaho, our fish and game director went over to Africa and shot 4 baboons. And he resigned, but there was so much backlash that they forced him out. And they were like, you shot a family of baboons, yada, yada. And when you live over there, a family is about 50 baboons. And not to mention, they're stealing babies out of villages. They're destroying crops. And so again, just like there's no education on these matters for the public, or they don't want to hear it either. Or there's probably education out there, they just don't want to hear it. But it's just interesting how people jump to conclusions about things. And so Africa has its whole other management plan, which is so interesting in itself.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you right now, we leave the end of May and a baboon is on my list. They are not something you're going to go and say, I'm hunting a baboon. They're an opportunity that if it arises, you take them. But troops far exceed 4 baboons. You're looking at 30, 40, 50, even more in a troop. And the other thing that isn't talked about is how aggressive they are. And they're aggressive towards humans.
And they're big. They're not, they're big, and their teeth. And like I said, they would steal babies out of the villages. They're like my biggest fear over there. I hate them.
So it's funny you say that, because I'm not scared of much, right? 2 years ago, we were in a situation where the cameraman and I heard some ruffling through the grass, and he took off running. I turned around with a .338 thinking that it was a leopard. And he's like, you American women are crazy. And I was like, well, stop. We're not all like this, but I'm not going to run and give it something to chase.
Yeah, running's for prey.
So I've stood my ground with that. I've been on foot less than 60 yards from a rhino with no weapon. And I've stood my ground. I've sat calmly. But I will tell you, I have been within 40 yards of a baboon not ready for it. And that is probably the scariest I've ever been in my life. They can rip you to shreds, their teeth, their claws, their little, well, fingernails. But they are like 8 times stronger than what you would ever expect. And they're just.
Yeah. And they have the dexterity of a human. And
Yes.
it's terrifying.
Yes. So I learned very quickly that you don't tell a South African your fears because they will use it against you. So our cameraman that was with me for the what we thought was a leopard ended up being a tracking dog the previous year. This past year we were in camp, and one of the girls that we had on our event with us, her and I were sitting, and we were just kind of overlooking what they call the circle of life. And you're not allowed to hunt the circle of life unless it's a baboon or some sort of predator. But it's kind of a safe haven that all of the animals can come, they can congregate and get from the watering hole, and you can see them from the lodge. So we're sitting there and we're watching, the warthogs and the rhinos, and you're seeing the impalas come down the hillside to drink, and it's just beautiful setting, right? Mid-afternoon. Well, all of a sudden, this humanoid figure between trees, and it's like not just like you see one and you kind of like do a double take, then it happens again and you do a triple take, and then you see like 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm like, oh, these are baboons. I hop this wall, this brick wall. Our PH and his fiance are walking up, and I'm like, Michael, there's baboons in the circle of life. And he's like, little lady, get your gun. So I take off running, and I run through this lodge. I run out to the truck to get the gun. I run to the other truck to get the ammo. I run to the shooting range, which is across from it's in the parking lot of the lodge on the back. And they are running through our shooting range. Perfect. And I'm talking like at this point in time, we've seen over 30. So one troop of over 30 baboons. And by the time I get the gun up and get kind of like situated, the last one is this monstrosity of a male running. And he's the biggest baboon I've yet to see, but just a big, big boy. I get my scope on him, and I'm following him. And as soon as I click my safety off, he ducks into the bush and never saw him again. I was so excited. I thought I was going to piss myself. I was like, this is finally happening. Like, yes, no, just kidding. It didn't. And that's why I say it's an opportunity animal, because you have to be at the split second ready for them. But they're not managed in the, again, just like predators, they need management, and they're not. It's like taboo to shoot a monkey, which is crazy to me. I took 3 vervets there this past year, and I did a whole education piece on, could you imagine? It's no different than like for us, a raccoon, right? Yeah. Like it's a raccoon that rips the shingles off your house for them because they rip all that thatching out. But with you being in Tanzania, you had to have had some experience with some of the damage that the smaller monkeys cause over there.
Oh yeah. Anything from stealing food, which, you're living in poverty over there. So any food that they have is so important. Baboons will even go after goats and rip them apart and eat them. And so, like you said, rip out the thatching. It's wild to see the issues they cause, and we don't think about it because we don't have to deal with them. And that's back to wolves. A lot of states don't have to deal with wolves, and so it doesn't matter to them. And that's kind of how we are with baboons in Africa: out of sight, out of mind until it's your problem.
Yeah. But it's funny that it all circles back to just a little bit of education, a little bit of conversation. And I really appreciate you coming on with us, because having those conversations and somebody tuning in, and maybe they haven't followed your page yet, but they hear this podcast, they're going to be like, oh, I've never looked at it from that perspective. Or maybe they didn't understand why wolves are hunted. And we're never going to convert someone who is an anti-hunter, right?
No, like you can't fight emotions with facts. It just doesn't work.
I love that. You cannot. And you're not going to win. There's no point to try. So just kind of letting them do their thing. All they want is a response from you anyways.
Yeah.
So not providing that, but if somebody comes to you with a question, and it may come off like, I'm not really sure how they're asking this, just come back with kindness and education, because the odds are they probably just don't know. And I really appreciate having these conversations, whether it's about wolf management, whether it's about bears, whether it's about Africa. Everything has a purpose, everything has a place, and everything needs a balance. And us as humans hunting these animals, we're creating that management. And as long as you're out there doing it ethically and legally, we're on your side.
Absolutely.
So we are going to jump to one more commercial break to hear from our closing sponsors. And I have a couple more questions for you before we get off.
Alrighty.
And now to the final segment to this week's episode of Women of the Wild podcast. We will conclude this segment by thanking our closing sponsors. Stay tuned for more of this week's episode after this short word from our sponsors. Muzzy Pheasant Farms, a mid-Michigan family-owned and operated pheasant game preserve that is open year-round. Muzzy offers educational courses and hunts. They are family-oriented, creating a great opportunity for new and seasoned upland hunters. With no membership required, come hunt with Muzzy Pheasant Farms. You can find more information at muzzypheasantfarms.com or check them out on Facebook and Instagram. Blast and Cast Guide Service is a veteran-owned and operated Michigan-based guide service for the Great Lakes. With decades of experience of fishing and waterfowl, they ensure a safe and enjoyable trip every time. You can check them out at blastandcastguideservice.com or on Facebook and Instagram. Ultimate Veteran Adventures. UVA offers outdoor therapy, recreation, and camaraderie through hunting and fishing adventures around the country for veterans, active duty military, Gold Star families, and first responders. You can find them at ultimateveteranadventures.com or on Facebook and Instagram. Sawmill Creek Bait and Lures, a husband and wife owned and operated company, the home of the C4, one of the best trapping canine lures on the market. You can find them at sawmillcreekbaitandlures.com or on Facebook and Instagram. Wicked 7 Outdoors, a Southwest Texas outfitter guide service with an exceptional care and quality of backcountry mountain hunts for free-range aoudad. Also offering high fence and low fence exotics, come immerse yourself in the outdoor experience. You can find Wicked 7 Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. Misguided Outdoors is a female-driven Michigan-based guide service offering turkey and waterfowl hunts. Misguided is focused on educating women and youth, providing a hands-on hunt experience for all ages. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. We thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
So welcome back. We have had an incredible conversation here with Kate Small, and we've gone from wolf conservation to bear, and then we kind of trapered off into South Africa there for a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit about you as a mother in the outdoors and you as a woman, what that life looks like for you as a mom towards your kids, the kind of things that you're doing to engage them in the outdoors, and maybe tips that you have as a mother for other young moms who are that are outdoors women that want to involve their kids. What are some of your tips and tricks, and how do you do it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is my kids are 5 and 2 right now, and my husband and I are both avid hunters. And so we knew from the beginning, if we wanted to continue hunting, our hunting might look a little different when we can't find a babysitter, which, you can't always find a sitter. And so we were like, we're just going to incorporate our children into it. And it was super important for us because to me, it's so much more than hunting, right? It's a moral compass. You're teaching them ethical values, whether it's respecting other hunters, taking ethical shots. It's eating the meat, what education behind it. I figured it was the best way to round out our kids to be good people, because it's just so much more than going out and killing something. It just is. There's so much behind it, practicing shots before going out to shoot at an animal. And so we've taken, our daughter was on our back from the very beginning. I even in the womb, I had killed my first archery animal when I was 6 months pregnant. I killed a moose when I was 4 months pregnant. We'll bring them on the bear bait with us. And so they can see animal behavior. And while that might be like frowned upon by some people, that's our way of life. And, you know, they also teaches them to respect that animal. And no, you don't go up and pet a bear. You know, you learn their behavior, see what they do, and you respect each animal. And so it's just, it seems daunting. And I get it as like when you're a new mom and you're like, well, I want to hunt, but how do I do this with kids? And honestly, you just adapt and you just have to do it, and it'll get easier and easier, and your kid will get used to it and start behaving the certain way out in the woods. And it's taking that first step to get them out. And then other tip, bring lots of snacks.
Yes, that's a pro tip.
Yes. And even just, you know, go with the expectation, which I usually do. I'm like, we're probably not going to be successful this hunt, but you're successful in so many other ways by teaching your children. And even just gun safety, when my daughter was 4, she got her first little 22. And, you know, we've hammered gun safety in her head, and she is religious about it. And that being said, read your child. My 4-year-old was mature enough to be able, that I trusted her enough to listen and respect a gun. My 2-year-old son might be 20 before I allow him to handle a rifle. It just depends on the kid.
Maturity for sure.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, just taking the step to get them out there. And it's not always about being successful. It's about teaching them.
And the time spent together. Absolutely. I remember, I don't quote me on how long ago this was, and maybe you may or not remember this, but it stuck with me. You did a video of you with your daughter teaching her how to shoot that 22. Yeah. And it wasn't like, was it, I gotta say it was almost a year ago.
Yeah, it was last year.
Yes. And I remember you saying, you know what, I might get ridiculed for this, but at this point, I don't care. It's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think that's so respectable. To who cares what they say? This child is ready for this. I'm her mother. I know her maturity. I know this is where she's at. And you sat there, and sometimes it's that tough love, but it has to be stern. It's not a game. It's not a toy. This is serious.
Yeah.
And I respected that so. I remember like the day you posted that, and I watched it and I was like, yes, this is a mom who is doing it right, because you're not sugarcoating it. You are stern. This is serious matter. We're not giving up. We're doing this. And I have to commend you for that, because most parents are so quick to put them in front of a couch, put them in front of a TV, hand them their snacks. No. It's get your butt up. Let's go outside. Let's do something productive. I'll bring the snacks still though. So let's go.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And that's a point of one of my other big reasons for getting them outside and to hunt, is because hunting just breeds perseverance, because you're not successful all the time. And kids these days, and even adults, we're like, well, we want this at the touch of a button and it should just be easy. And there's nothing easy about hunting. And so if you can get your kids out there and show them that if you work hard enough and you stick with it, eventually you'll be successful. Hunting is one of the best tools to teach them that.
Plus, the outdoors is just this whole level of peace and it's therapeutic, and it builds that connection that is unmatched. You're not going to get it sitting inside. You're not going to get it, from anything else. Like it's a piece that you have to find within you. And for anyone that says they're not an outdoorsy person, like, I'm not saying you got to hunt. I'm not saying you got to fish, but it's kind of like somebody that doesn't like dogs. I'm like, I don't know that I trust your judgment if you don't like the outdoors in some form or fashion.
Be friends.
Yes. If you can't go outdoors and find something, and it doesn't have to be harvesting anything. If you can't go out and you can't bird watch, or you can't just go sit outside and enjoy what's happening around you, those aren't my people. I'm sorry to say it, but it's like a sorry, not sorry, but I feel the same way with dog people. Like if my dog doesn't like you, don't even bother having a conversation with them.
Exactly. It's so true.
But we're, as mothers, we're raising, because I have two boys. I have a 10-year-old and I have a 14-year-old, and they are avid outdoorsmen. They are in the duck blind. They're out there turkey hunting. They're out there in the deer blinds. They're out there on the trap lines with me in the bitter cold on Christmas Eve. Like they really are. But I might get slack for the way that I word this, but I say that my job is not to be your friend. My job is not to raise assholes.
No, absolutely.
My job is to make sure that I am creating well-rounded men that respect not only the animal, but our environment and other people. And that is what I think outdoors does to people, is it's a very well-rounded human being. Now, yes, there are people who are outdoorsy that are terrible people. That's what poachers are, which we are as a hunter, you are absolutely against those people. So I'm not saying that it is the cure-all to everything, but you get a kid into duck hunting, you don't have to worry about drugs and girls and all this other stuff because he can't afford it. My son's 14 years old, about to be 15, and he won't put a duck call down. And I was like, cool, get to the world champions, work your butt off and get there. Like, if this is your passion, this is your dream, do good in school, get a job. Like, you can afford those nice fancy duck calls, you can afford those nice waiters you want, but give them a passion like that, because that is what it is. It's teaching perseverance. It's teaching you that you have to have a drive, you have to have a goal, and you got to work for it. And it may not always pan out, but the time that it does, it made it all worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the best takeaway is the memories.
Yes.
Because that's all my hunts are. No matter what animal I've taken, I remember who was with me, like how it felt, the teamwork after when we have that animal on the ground. It's the memories that are the best part, and the people you do it with.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Yes, 1,000%, whether it's kids, get my dad on his very first harvest with me in my life. Like, those things are things that will stick with you forever. And I love taxidermy. I love mounting everything because I'm a sentimental person, but
That's
photo,
me too.
like, and I'm not snapping these photos to post them. But to take a good quality photo, or maybe it's not, and it's something goofy happening, but to have a photo after a harvest, I feel is so important, because, you and I both work in the medical field. We know that our memories are not going to serve us well forever. Yeah. So to have those things for us to look back on one day, or even our kids to look back and say, oh, look what mom did with grandpa, like, or look what mom and dad did together. And oh my gosh, I was with them. I have a soft spot for that. I'm a very sentimental person.
Oh, I'm the exact same way. I think to my husband's detriment, he's like, gosh, can we stop spending money on mounts? I'm like, no, everything's getting mounted.
Yes. I know that you are one of my people, because I mount a lot. My taxidermist absolutely loves me. Like, just 2 weeks ago, I brought home 3 mounts in one weekend, and he's like, your other 3 will be done in like another month or 2. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to make sure we have everything cycled through before Africa starts coming home.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait to see how Africa goes for you guys this time.
Yes. It's super excited. We do them as a co-ed event every year so far. We actually have a co-ed event that's going to be coming out for 2026 or 2025 and 2026 as well, but we start doing some all women's trips in there too. It's a place that stole my heart. If my boys, if I could get their dad on board with letting me take them, I'd have already been gone.
And it's such a great place for kids as well. I have a friend that takes her really young boys, like I think the youngest is 4 or 5, and he's able to shoot animals and stuff because it's an environment you can kind of match your experience level. And
Yes.
so it's so cool. And they've gone every single year for however long, and they just love it.
Yes. The hopeful plan is my boys are going to go in 26. I think they're at a good age now, but it's more of it's expensive in
Yeah.
airfare. It's not an expensive trip to go do. Like for if you wanted to go, you could go and you could spend, I'm going to say with airfare, gratuity and everything, you're going to stay right around 10 grand or under. If you don't go like nuts shooting a Cape Buffalo and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But to take 2 kids as a single mom is not something that I have a super great budget to just go spend 10 grand on airfare.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one that we're budgeting for. And I plan, my dad's first harvest in my life was a sable in South Africa. So it's a very sentimental thing to me. Actually, last year I had a complete breakdown and cried on Pride Rock because I just missed my dad being there. And I get concerned sometimes that, is he going to make it back? And are we going to have that experience again? So within the next probably 2 years, my plan is to go back over there with my kids and have that harvest together with them, with him, and have that whole experience together.
That would be amazing.
But it's about creating the memory. It's not even, I tell people, like, it's not about how big the animal is, which where we go, trophies are beyond amazing. But to me, it's the experience. I don't even care if I shoot anything. I could go and let my kids and my dad shoot everything and be just as happy.
I think I get way more excited when someone else is behind the gun. Like if my husband's behind the trigger, I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm just like, oh my, and he like, no reason for me to be, I'm not nervous. I'm just so excited that he's going to get this animal. And when it's me, I'm like just dead steady. Like it's just, there's something about watching someone else harvest something that's just amazing.
Yes, especially if it's like with kids being their first time or these girls getting out on their first harvest, like it's unmatched. So I know that I kept you a little bit longer than what I thought we would. We try to keep them right at around an hour, but I can't help it. I think this conversation with you has been absolutely incredible. I think you're so inspirational. I think you're making a massive, massive impact in conservation efforts and in our outdoor industry. I think that there's a lot that you have to bring to the table for so many to learn from. I'm excited to see your wolf class course go and grow and that morph along with you along the way, and that education being brought to that predator hunting. I do have one last question that is for our guests that come on. I want to start doing something. So I'm actually piloting this with you. Is if there is one tip, one trick that you could give to a brand new hunter to get in the outdoors, what would it be?
My biggest thing is just don't be scared to ask questions. Do not be scared, because that's how you learn. And go to the seminars, go online, take the courses you can. There's so many great online courses you can take. But don't be scared to ask questions. And if you can, find a mentor or a buddy that's willing to take you out. But just don't be afraid to do it would be my biggest thing, because that'll hold you back forever.
Absolutely. You can't grow if you don't try.
No.
Where would our listeners be able to find you on your social media platforms, or how to get information on this course that you're instructing?
Yes. So social media, I'm on Instagram as Kate Small Outdoors. It's Kate_Small_Outdoors. The academy we put on is called the Western Wolf Academy, and we are also on Instagram at the Western Wolf Academy. Feel free to message me with any questions. I'm on Facebook as well, just as Kate Small. I need to start a YouTube page, but I'm just so lazy with editing that one of these days. But yes, that is where anyone can find me, ask questions. I'm more than happy to chat. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on. This was one of the coolest podcasts and conversations I've gotten to do. So it was pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you so much. As having that mission of inspiring women to get in the outdoors, you are an absolute pleasure. You're making a massive ripple in this outdoor industry. And I think that it's so important to have people like you on here to have that conversation that are honest, that are real. So I want to thank you because you are, I don't know if you understand the magnitude of how impactful a female can be. And I think that you are a prime example of impact and what you're creating for our outdoor world.
Thank you.
Well, listeners, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with Kate today. Please make sure that if you're interested in coming on events, that you check out our website at www.womenofthewild.net. We have a ton of trips coming up, from flying carp bow fishing to Africa to Texas exotics, diver duck hunting, sturgeon, and everything in between. Monthly online educational courses. We also have a few in-person educational courses that are coming up. But we also have our annual newsletter that you can subscribe to get all of that information heads up and upfront. But until next time, we look forward to getting out in the field with you.